I don't know about you, this is my favourite bike of the 5. Casey Stoner's 2008 GP8, is that what you call it?
Yep, yeah, exactly.
I mean, how the bloody hell does one go about buying such a iconic bike?
The factory sells quite a lot of them. There's one guy in the south of England that I've got to know reasonably well, and he's got a huge collection. He buys He buys a lot of ex-race bikes, and once in a while he takes pity on the rest of us and decides to sell one. So, quick phone call, and then try and convince my wife I'm just going down for a cup of coffee and
come back with a bike in the back.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So this is the 800.
Yeah.
I mean, what does it rev to? I mean,
it's somewhere around. I think the hard limiter's set at 20,200 RPM. Oh. But there's a soft limiter that kicks in at 19.5 or something.
Just to be safe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're very revvy engines, and there's quite a lot of technology in it that sort of helps that, because obviously there's low speed corners to consider as well where the revs are going to drop. So it's got variable trumpets, so the actual inlet system moves up and down as the revs go up, the trumpets get shorter.
I've got variable trumpets.
Yeah, I know you have. I heard it last night.
Enough said on that subject.
So, was it a runner when you got it? Is it just?
No, it wasn't, and we have got it to run now. Although there's still a way to go before it goes on a track. But it's taken hours and hours and hours of trying to sort out what's what, because there's most of the software is locked off. So
right. So because the Ducati, when you buy a bike from Ducati, they're not. My understanding is, say for instance, the Rossi bike that Chris Wilson bought.
Yeah.
They're not supposed to be run, or they're not.
Some of them yes, some of them no. I'm a little bit hazy on what's what because I didn't buy this directly from the factory, but I've not had to sign anything along those lines.
Right.
And obviously they're developed through the season, so all these things are triggers, brooms. They get new engines reasonably regularly and all that sort of stuff. So tracing the history of, say, an individual frame, well, what is the bike? Is it the engine, the swing arm, the frame? How does it? It's quite difficult to know, but through a lot of research, hours and hours and hours of watching MotoGP's footage and looking at photographs, trying to figure out whether the photographs are from race or practice sessions, you can figure out to an extent which bike has done which race. So SC2, which is the designation of this bike, and it's covered in stickers that say that.
Yeah.
It did the 3 races he won in a row, including Donington, which to me is really important because British Grand Prix, particularly when it was at Donington, is a hell of an event, isn't it? It did the famous Laguna Seca race.
Yes.
The corkscrew. Have you ever been to Laguna?
I've ridden it. Yeah.
I mean, we did a lot of testing with Indy cars there, and it's one of my favourite tracks. But going through the corkscrew, even in a transit van, is just terrifying, isn't it? It's like falling off the end of the earth.
No, exactly. I'm just surprised. You look at like the dash. It's a MotoGP bike. I don't know about you, but look at all there's no buttons. There's not enough buttons on there to press.
There's some switches up there.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I was expecting the PS2 style, PlayStation buttons and all sorts of stuff. There's nothing there.
Yeah, there's an enormous amount you can change in the software. As I say, some of the software is locked off on this bike, so we don't really know how it's programmed. But with the later bikes, you could program them from corner to corner, which Crutchlow famously fell foul of when the bike lost its place on the circuit. And, that technology's been around a long time. Mercedes were using it in their DTM program back in the early 90s, and if the car or the bike loses its place on the track, it's really not a good position to be in.
I suppose this is before it went to monocoque, so it's a
semi... Yeah, exactly, and part of the issue with this particular season with tracing individual bike histories was that the carbon bike was being tested at that time, so the engines were slightly different between the two, but a lot of parts were moving between the test program, which started mid-year as I understand it, and then late year. So as soon as Valencia was over, this bike was then ridden by Gibernard in the post-Valencia test.
Right.
And at that point, Stoner moved over to the carbon bike, and then it all gets a bit hazy as to what bits went where. Okay. So,
well, it's absolutely stunning, and
I think so.
I think I might take it with me home. So Schwantz is
95.
4 or 5. Okay.
So this is the last chassis that he rode.
Right, before he retired.
He did the first 3 races on this bike and retired on it.
Oh, wow.
Scott Russell then took over, and it's still got the scrutineering sticker on the frame from the Assen race. But Schwantz for me was, you fall in love with what you grew up watching, don't you? And it's a particularly brutal era of motorcycle racing, isn't it? The 2 straight 500s.
Yeah.
So.
And have you ridden this?
Yeah, and curiously, it's looking back at the footage of the '95 season, it becomes quite obvious once you've ridden one that the bike that was wildly difficult to ride and gave bikes of that era their reputations was the Honda.
Yeah.
And does a Marquez, and he looks like he's going to crash at every opportunity, and in several cases does. The Suzukis and the Yamahas look a lot more stable and comfortable, and the thing about these is the chassis is just incredible. It turns like it's psychic.
Yeah.
And they're a lot more torquey than you'd imagine. The Hondas apparently had such a narrow power band that you were in the limiter all the time, because if you shifted too early, you'd fall out of the power band and you'd be a second or two getting back into it. Whereas this pulls from sort of 5,000-6,000 RPM really strongly. It's a very versatile engine. I was really, really surprised.
Yeah, I rode his 93 bike at Goodwood, the Harris bike, and apart from the carbon brakes, which proved me out.
That's why this is on steels at the moment.
Yeah.
I've got the carbons, but if I ride it, I tend to ride it on steels just because there's no point.
No, exactly. But yeah, the first thing that really shocked me was the engine, how torquey it is. You know, you just you hear all these things of power bands and narrow power bands and how dangerous they are to ride, but it felt quite nice.
It's carburetors, but there are a sort of injection feed system to the carb. The carbs themselves are horrendously complicated. I just dread to think how much they'd cost if you were to try and reproduce them. I mean, they are wild. And there's obviously an ECU to control all of that. So it's electronically, it's reasonably sophisticated, certainly for the time, but no, nothing like traction control or slide control or anti-wheelie. And the anti-wheelie is just wait till it wheelies, and then there is there's a quick shifter that
of course.
Is a side stand switch. It's as simple as that. It's a side stand switch. When it closes, it just momentarily cuts the ignition. So you wait till it wheelies, and then that'll put it back down.
I suppose being 95, so that's what, 20 years old plus. Mm-hmm. How do you get parts? And I suppose
you can't. It's as simple as that. But it was a complete bike. Tom, who's sitting behind you, did a bit of the cosmetic work on it, and
Tom
did the paint work, etc. And Nathan at Classic Team Suzuki did the chassis. And so far we haven't had a problem. I'm sure eventually we will, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
It is absolutely immaculate, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a beautiful bike.
Seeing as it belonged to Schwantz, it's immaculate.
Yeah. Yes.
So this is Checa's 2011
championship winning bike, which is quite a mega bit of kit.
Yeah.
I was offered a substantial amount of money taken off the price if I was to swap the forks for more conventional forks, so they're clearly pretty special bits of kit. It's quite an interesting bike to ride. When I first got it, it was set up as Checa finished the season, and it was alarmingly tippy. I mean, it felt like it was hard to keep it upright in a straight line, to be honest.
Wow.
So I have moved the yokes up the forks a little bit just to make it a bit more user-friendly for someone of my sort of level. I'm a fairly average rider rather than a World Superbike champion, and there's a big difference between the two. It's quite wheelie happy. The GP bikes, it's astonishing how hard you can accelerate without them wheeling, even without an anti-wheelie electronic function, because the swing arm's just so long, whereas this has a conventional length swing arm. The engine it's just beautiful. It's really torquey, really smooth.
And they went and ruined it with the Panigale, didn't they? It's total opposite of a V-twin. This is your archetypal booming.
Yeah, that's true. But then certainly on the Superleggera, the electronics really make it a lot more rideable.
Yeah.
It's a lot heavier than a GP bike. You really notice the weight. But I really enjoy riding it. So it's a fantastic thing, and obviously it's in the condition that it was at the end of the season. So it's the same paint with all the paint chips and the fasteners where his knees were are slightly worn and all that sort of stuff. And the idea is very much to keep it in that condition. So obviously I'm not riding it hard.
Yeah. And is this being, I don't want to use the word every day because it puts it down, but when you're riding this, do you have less fear about dropping it than the GP bikes?
No, I don't. Because of its history, that's, it's unique, and if you do drop it, it's going to be gone, isn't it? To a degree, it'll be the same bike, but it's never going to be in the same condition, I guess.
No. Exactly.
So there is a bit of I feel a bit of responsibility not to drop it, because they're great bits of kit, and the reason we're standing here is because I don't want them tucked away in a barn where no one ever sees them. I really enjoyed watching them race, and for other people to enjoy that as well is terrific, and I'm lucky enough to be able to have the experience of riding it comparatively very slowly.
Should we move? So 2003,
Yeah,
Troy Bayliss's bike.
yeah, he did the last 3 races of 2003 on this bike. Obviously it was Ducati's first season back in MotoGP, and I mean they made a hell of a good job of it.
Yeah.
Winning your 4th race out
Was that Caparossi?
Yeah, astonishing achievement. But they had a generally good season, and it's a hell of a good bike. I think it's one of the best looking bikes I've come across.
It's beautiful.
The sharp nose Kokinski Kajiva for me was always one of the best looking bikes.
Yeah.
And this is sort of, there's definitely similarities between the two, and yeah, it's a stunning looking thing, and it goes like you wouldn't believe. The noise at 17,000 RPM is just unreal. So this bike is a conventional firing order screamer,
right,
as they're called, whereas the GP5 that's on this side is a twin pulse engine, so it's like 2 V twins bolted together. But it's not quite big bang. It's about 15. I think it's 15 degrees out of sync.
But that sound is associated with Big Bang, isn't it? That's what they.
It's harsher than Big Bang.
Is it? Okay.
It's definitely rattle your eyeballs
really?
Material. Yeah, but really smooth once you get going. They both are. The sort of difference in engine characteristic is with the GP3. It's got bags of torque low down, but it really takes off at about 13,000 RPM, whereas the GP5, the torque's there instantly.
Wow.
So from 5 or 6, it just pulls. The amazing thing is how hard you can accelerate without them wheeling, which is...
Like you say, the swing arms are...
Yeah, they are.
Super long, aren't they?
Hugely long, yeah. And obviously the relationship between the front and rear sprocket and the pivot is critical to how it behaves under load, whether it wheelies or squats or...
Okay. So you're an engineer, I'm not.
Yes.
Yeah.
I obviously can't get anywhere close to what the original riders would have been able to do with them on the track, but they're not nearly as intimidating as you might expect. Once you get beyond the noise and all that sort of stuff, they do everything you want them to do. They turn, the brakes are like being hit with a sledgehammer.
Nice. I suppose you want to stop 200 and it's because of the horsepower, don't you?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the power delivery is really linear, and at low throttle angles, it's not jerky, or the first 30, 35, 40% throttle is really smooth, and then once you've got the thing stood up and you open it, it's recalibrate your brain material. It really is. The first time, if I've not ridden one for a few months, and we've got a fairly long runway behind our workshop here, which we occasionally get the use of. And the first time you're out, beginning of the year, it's you come back with your eyes wide open.
I bet. I can imagine.
The acceleration is just astonishing.
I mean, apart from the runway, you obviously can't ride them anywhere. Where have you taken them on track?
This one I have. I've been around Donington on it.
Because it was 120, 30 decibels?
It's loud, yeah. It's not as loud as the 5. That's like that'd wake God up if he was having a snooze. It's or Satan, whichever
Yeah,
you prefer. But so I did 12 laps on the GP3, and that's about as much as I could physically take. They are really physical bikes to ride. You have to climb all over them to get them to do what you want.
Do they get hot?
Yes.
Does it? Yeah.
Extreme. To the point the bars get so hot you can barely hold on to them. These little cutouts in the fairing are to cool your hands down.
Okay.
And when you come in, you used to seeing on the TV, the mechanics will hold the front of the fairing for the guy to get off, and part of the reason for that is that the bars and the rest of it are just so hot you can't hold it. If you've ridden 1198s or Panigales or anything with underseat exhaust, you'll be used to it being fairly hot, but this is another level. This is like you are about to be on fire, and you just beg for the next straight to be able to put some airflow through it to cool yourself down. That's
part of the mentality, probably. They were like, look, let's heat the riders up so they go quicker and cool themselves down.
I mean, how they cope with places like Malaysia, I just can't believe. I asked Chaz Davis once, and he said it was the worst hour of his life doing that race.
I can't walk into the pit lane without bursting into sweat, let alone ride a bike.
It's quite something. So these two bikes are obviously, there's a family lineage between them. The GP3 to me is a more sort of holistic design, if you like. Everything is beautifully laid out and where it should be. The GP5 is the same design but with stuff obviously being changed and moved around, and I wouldn't go as far as to say gobbed on, but it's got a fly-by-wire throttle system on it that's...
So that's not fly-by-wire?
No,
Okay.
that's cable operated. Yeah. This has got a fly-by-wire system that's all operated through cables, so when you electronically come to set it up, all the cable tensions are fighting each other, and there's a load of hysteresis in there, and in layman's terms, you couldn't dream up a worse way of producing a fly-by-wire throttle. The motor that drives the engine throttle is up in the nose with cables running down to the engine, so it's a lot of work to get it to operate reliably. Once it's working, it's okay, but so that was obviously a new development for that year, or late the previous year. So you can see where the fairings moved, and there are little add-in panels and so on. So when they came to design the GP7, that kind of all got moved, and it was designed again from being a ground-up design.
And is it a case of the old adage, you need a laptop to start them, or is it a case of
Adage?
Yes.
Adage.
Adage. Depends where you're from, mate.
Oui.
Yeah, you definitely need a laptop to run them most of the time, but we've actually warmed these up before you guys got here, so if you want to have a go.
Let's turn them on.
So
a little flap there.
Yeah, so it's obviously slipper clutch.
Yeah.
But we're driving through the rear wheel, so the clutch will immediately go into slip. Yeah. Without locking it up. So there's the door and there's a pin sticking out there.
Behind the fuel cap.
Just here. Fuel cap. Behind the fuel cap.
Okay.
That locks the clutch up. So we'll put it into third. Spin the rear.
Third. Just so there's enough.
Yeah, to get the engine spinning fast enough. You'll drop the clutch. Yeah. Pull it back in once it's running. You need a little bit of throttle to get it started, and then if you could put
just a little tap.
Just hold it open a crack, because it'll idle. But obviously it's a little while since we warmed it up. Yeah. So foot on the rear brake, so as we can get the pin out.
Straight away.
Constantly. Yeah. Straight away. Yeah. And keep your foot there until I'll pull it out. Yeah. So if you kind of look under your arm and watch me do that, and I'll show you the pin, then you can put it in neutral.
Okay.
It's race shift.
I think so.
As long as you don't take the fingers out, that's fine.
Okay. sounds so naughty. It sounds like it's going to kill you.
Yeah.
And this bike will stall if it's cold.
Okay.
So just
not
hold
me
it.
being
Yeah,
shit.
no, exactly. So
It's
just
the cold. It's the cold.
hold it sort of. It's because of the fibre wire. It's kind of difficult to hold it at constant revs. But if you hold it at you know what you imagine about 4,000 or 5,000 is, that would be fine until it's at sort of.
What I imagine about 4,000 or 5,000.
Yeah, well, it starts at 7. Yeah.
Okay. So hold it an imaginary number. You're never going. Okay.
Exactly. What could go wrong? So we'll put it in. This one we have to put in 6th to get it spinning fast enough because it's got so much compression with the cylinders close to each other.
Okay.
So we'll spin it up, drop the clutch till it's running, pull the clutch back in, and then I'll operate the rear brake, pull the pin out, and I'll show you the pin. And at that point, you can put it in neutral.
Okay. So neutral. So if we're in 6th, it's race shift.
All the way up.
Yeah. So all the way up, and then half a click down. And there is a neutral light which is there.
Okay. I'm gonna fuck this up.
No, you'll be fine. It
So-
might take a couple of. I mean, do you want me to do it first so you can see what we're
No,
doing?
we might as well get
No,
the
just-
magic on camera.
Good. You click down into 6th.
Okay, which is down.
Well, it would help if you weren't operating rear brake.
Oh.
There we go. Okay, so
I'm getting all flustered.
that should be 6th.
Yeah.
So water temp is here.
Yeah.
So if you could hold it at sort of constant revs till it gets to sort of 60 or 70, and then you can blip it a bit
Okay.
after that.
Thank you so much, Patrick.
That's all right. It's a pleasure. Glad we got there eventually. Yeah, no problem.
Thank you, mate.
It vibrates a lot, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was standing there, my feet were getting like pins and needles.
Yeah.
And that smell, honestly, if you could, I wish you could do a scratch and sniff. Because this smells nicer than that. I don't know what it is.
It's the same fuel, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Sorry about getting it going. It was like, oh god.
It's
Panicking.
It's complicated, and
I was like, hang on,
when you're
Coach,
doing
so
events,
don't go over 5,000 RPM. Don't break the thing, but it doesn't say 5. Okay.
Go into sixth, go into first. Yeah.
First, 6th? No.
Wow, that is...
The noise,
I
the
can't
bark,
get
the bark it makes.
It's the vibrator, just the whole...
Man,
it's,
I know.
it's a whole body experience, isn't it?
I think my bottom's got literally it's like a
Got
like a massage, like
Okay.
quite a nice like
But
masseuse.
amazingly, once you're moving, it's silky smooth. It really doesn't
it did
feel like
it felt once it was going, and you kind of know,
Yeah.
I didn't want to break it.
Yeah,
or anything,
yeah,
so I was like, I
absolutely.
don't know what to do, and it's
Yeah.
your bike. But once it revs up there, actually the higher RPM, it was really nice.
Yeah,
really nice.
once you're moving, it's, as I said earlier, once you get over the noise, It's beautiful to drive.
It's scary as hell though.
Yeah, it is, yeah. Which is good. You need to be scared once in a while.
I need a whiskey. Don't even drink whiskey. Oh. A Red Bull Jaeger bomb. Right, I'm just going to try and stick this sticker on without them noticing. This is Stoner's bike. Actually, Tom, can you film that?
Yeah. You won't be happy with this. Yes. You're done.
Thank you. Nothing. Does anyone want a cup of tea?